This is me writing an email in 1 day. And this is me writing an email in 1 hour. And this is me writing an email in 1 minute. That's time. In this video, I'm gonna see what comes out the best. A 1 minute email, a 1 hour email, or an email I spend a full day writing. And when I finish, I'm gonna send them out to my email list of thousands of copywriters to conduct a vote to see what you think would convert the best, and ultimately, what is the ideal time frame to spend on writing your email copy. So let's dive right into this. This is crazy. Anytime I send emails to my list, they're normally 500 plus words. And in this one, I've got less than 60 seconds to get something onto the page. And I don't know what it's gonna be, but I know that I wanna try to sell something and have at least one call to action present, but I don't know. Let's get into this one. 60 seconds on the clock, and let's see what we can do to this. But I decided to go with an offer on my freelance copywriting bundle. And I thought since it is so packed with value that I could lead with mostly just offer-driven copy. And as you can see, there's lots of typos. But all I tried to do was really just leverage, the benefits in the subject line and make the subject line the most enticing piece of this. And that's time. And that is insanely fast. I cannot believe that was 1 minute. And as you can see, I could barely get anything down on the page in that amount of time. So let's go over some quick stats on this email. I just wanted to kind of quickly, objectively score it on 3 things: the word count, the strength of the actual offer itself, and then the element of storytelling that's actually present in the email. So this one, in terms of word count, only 43 words. And then the offer score on this one, on a 1 to 10, I'm saying very low because I don't think I really sold really anything in this. I just kind of listed out what's in it. And so I gave it a 3 out of 10. And in terms of storytelling, this one's a flat 1. I don't think you could get worse than this. There's no story in this. This is just straight to the point, straight to the offer. And the only company I've ever seen do emails like this effectively is Sticker Mule. So maybe we're taking Sticker Mule inspiration in this one because that is the only place I've ever seen emails this short that actually potentially work. You can't really do much writing when you only have 60 seconds. You've got to just get something down on the page. And in this case, hopefully I sold a click to some extent. If I were to go back in, I would do a lot of things different. But in 60 seconds, I think it's pretty good. I think we would get clicks on this email. I think if I sent it out to my actual email list, they would be very shocked to see something like this because it's much shorter than anything I ever send. But in this case, if the sales page actually did its job, we may still see some orders come through. So I'm very curious to see what I can do once I get some breathing room in that hour and that day. But nevertheless, this is what we got on the page. And since we have an hour this time, I don't have to type quite as fast. And so hopefully there'll be a lot less typos. And hopefully this one will come through a little bit more smoothly. So let's throw an hour on the clock and see what we can do here. So to keep things fair, in this one, I'm going to be selling the same product, but this time I want to really nail that story. So you can see I keep going back and forth on the lead because I want this to pull you through in a way that is way more compelling than the first one, which we just got straight to the point. So I feel like I nailed a hook where I'm going to actually embrace the idea that I landed Repeat Safety as my first client ever. And I know that this is not a reality for most freelancers. Most freelancers struggle for years and years and years to get their first client. So when I go to sell a freelance copywriting course, sometimes I get a big objection that like, hey, Rob, you're a special snowflake. And so I wanted to tell a story and actually lean into that in this email by saying, yes, I am a special snowflake in that regard, and I own up to this. In the year since, I've gone back in and I've actually, stripped out any advantages I would have and see how my client getting systems work. And so I wanted to tell this story in the copy, and you can see I'm starting to get really tensed up about actually being able to flesh up all the points there because I want that lead to be really strong. But it's starting to come together to the point where I feel like there's a really interesting hook because the truth is my freelance copywriting career started on a total accident, but things that I've done since were not an accident in any regard. They were actually fully intentional. And I'm convinced that if people follow, some of the things that I do teach, that they can do really well with this. So I spent an abnormal amount of time nailing that lead, but by the end of it, I felt really good about where things ended up. And that's time. And that was way harder than I expected. There is a story, at least this time. There's not just an offer. So we're able to actually write an email that's much more similar to the type of content that I usually write to my list. So let's go over some quick stats for this email here. For the word count on this one, we hit 673 words, which in my experience is right in that sweet spot area for a really strong, compelling email. Not too long, not too short. In terms of the actual offer we made, I think we did pretty good here. As I was reading back through the copy, I wouldn't say it was super compelling. I don't know if I would have personally bought off this email, but I think that we made some pretty compelling points throughout. So I scored it right in the middle at a 6 out of 10. And then in terms of storytelling on this one, I actually think this is really well done. It has a nice beginning, middle, and an end. But, there are some elements that are a little clunky, a little choppy that we could probably clean up in an edit to get it closer to that 8, 9, or 10 level that we would love to see it at. So for this one, I scored it at a 7. And, this is one that if I was actually pressed for time and I said I have to get an email out today, I would have probably sent this out to my list and been okay with that. And I'm very curious to see how this one will stack up to the 1-day email because we'll have a lot more time. This was kind of split half and half between, writing and editing and actually thinking it out because I had to come up with this idea on the spot. Sometimes I have my ideas in advance, which can help me out a lot. But in this case, I think we got some copy I'm pretty happy with. And I think it will do much better than our first email, or at least be an email that I'm proud to send. But let's see how that 1-day email shakes out as well.
Morning. God, that light is bright.
Good morning, good early morning to you. I'm very excited to actually get a full day to actually write this email. It's very reminiscent of how I used to be back in the day when I would write for clients and I would, get up really early and start some copy in the morning, take a break in the afternoon, come back to it, do some editing, and then polish it off the next day. And so this will probably be much more aligned with how I like to write emails and how I like to tell stories in the copy that I write because as you saw from the first 2 emails, I had to get straight to the offer and be very quick with it, which is not typically how I like to treat my copy and my email list in general. So today I'm excited to go a lot slower, to have some more breathing room and to be able to, spend some time actually really nailing that initial idea and that initial story that's gonna pull us all the way through. Because one thing I noticed when I was, I had a gun to my head essentially and it was like, you got 60 seconds or you got 60 minutes to write this. You just have to start writing whatever comes to mind loosely. And so if the initial idea or that initial hook is not good, you end up going off the rails with it, but you don't have a lot of time to actually make those decisions. But today that's totally different. So I want to spend some time this morning going a little bit slower and actually spending some time actually writing down some ideas that come to mind before we get into the writing. If you can get a nice solid foundation, the email is going to just go so much smoother once you actually get to the writing piece of it. So I wrote down 10 ideas that just kind of came to mind instantly as I was scanning that sales page for the different products that are inside that freelance bundle. I think I want to go with this hook of you should probably quit now, which is the time I basically was told to stop writing. It's juicy, it's interesting, there's controversy baked into it, and I've never talked about this before. So it has all the elements of stories I like to tell, and I think it's going to make it for a really compelling hook. So I'm going to play with it, see what we can do writing a little lead out, and if we can get some of the bones of the body copy put together. So I want to make this email epic. I want to make this 10 times better than anything we did yesterday since we have so much time to actually write it. So I spent a few minutes kind of working on this lead here, and I think we're onto something possibly very special because I can already feel the tension kind of building inside of me as I'm reading it. It says, here's a story I've never told anyone about the beginning of my copywriting career. Instantly juicy. One that doesn't paint me or freelancing in the best of light, but it's the truth. And it provides a powerful insight into what it really takes to make it as a copywriter. Here it goes. My first client, Ramit Sethi, almost fired me twice. I feel like we might be going somewhere with this, and I could feel that this is a story that I've wanted to embrace for a long time, which typically is something that I always am like, oh, this needs to be said because it's something I actually kept a secret. I didn't want people to know this about me, but I think it can actually help people if I paint it in a different light, and then we can actually sell some of our Freelance Freedom Bundle as well. So I can feel myself wanting to take a little break. So I think I'm gonna head over to the gym in just a bit, and I'm gonna come back to this when we're done. We're back, hydrated, refreshed. I feel like I was able to let this percolate in the background while I went and had a little bit of fun and shot the basketball around for a bit. And now I'm excited to polish off a first draft of this email. I'm gonna start from the top, just kind of workshop some of the copy, read everything that I have written, and then push through to the end. I find that to be a very helpful editing technique, is not really touch the stuff at the top, just read back to where you were, and then finish out, and then I'll actually go into full editor mode later this afternoon. And hopefully end up with something that is super good because I want to make an insanely good email for you guys since I have so much more time on this one. But I feel like there is a touch of pressure that I'm not used to, where I'm like, now I've become aware of needing this email to be awesome. Whereas with the other two, I just kind of had to perform. And now I'm like, hopefully this is going to be good. So one thing I was noticing as I went back and edited this first version is that I was spending way too much time in the story talking about, me getting this conversation and potentially being fired from my first ever client. But the point wasn't me being told that I was going to be let go if I didn't change things about myself. It was how I responded to this challenge of saying, hey, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you should quit. And so as I went back into the story, I went in and tried to spend some time and build that tension up so you could feel what it was like to be me as a new copywriter and get this feedback that, hey, your copy is not good enough. Maybe you should quit. And I wanted to show you how I kind of kept pushing through some of those edits. And the point was then how that challenge influenced me, how it constrained me, how it made me so focused on achieving a goal of actually being able to stick around and keep my job. And how later I would develop these little cool freelance challenges where for 30 days, all I would do is go full out and achieve things that I didn't think was possible. And so I had to edit the story away from it being all about this firing moment towards more of me and these challenges and how I responded to them so that it would be applicable to everyone and not just a drama-filled thing about these firing. So that about does it for edits today. I think we have a really solid V1 of this email put together that is very rich on story, and I think it's actually pretty compelling from an offer standpoint as well. So I'm gonna let this thing cool overnight, pop back in tomorrow morning, go through one last round of edits, and I think we'll be done. So I popped back on tomorrow morning with a fresh set of eyes, came in ready to cut, like with an axe cut, because this thing was pretty long in the teeth. It was 1,200 and something words, and I knew I needed to cut that down for a more sizable and more palatable email. So I'm really just trying to tighten up the bones of the story and just make sure it's a very slippery slope from the very beginning line all the way to the bottom of the email, all the way out to the call to the action, because I want this email to be really epic, and I was getting in my head just a little bit about making it too over the top. So I just decided to go in full editor mode and not really add anything, just try to take away and make sure that it gets back to the essence of what it was. And I think that this thing is coming together pretty solidly by the end. So let's look at some stats on this last email here. After we went in with our axe, we were able to cut that word count down from about 1,200 words down to 845, which is still in that sweet spot zone of an email that's not too long. It's pushing the upper limits of length, but it's also going to have nice story arcs kind of baked in, especially if the copy is on point. And when we look at the offer score on this one, I think we did a much better job of actually selling you on the core promises of all the different resources in that bundle and making it super believable that you could do this, which is a key thing that was probably missing from some of our earlier emails. So I put the offer score at an 8. And in terms of storytelling on this one, I feel like we told a really cool drama-packed story about me potentially getting fired and then taking you through that journey with me. It's filled with highs and lows. So I put the storytelling at a 9, but I don't know. I'll let you guys be the final judge and tell me what you think in the comments below. And I will see you guys in the next video.